The studio lights were too bright. Their white light flooded the stage, leaving a slight glow on people's faces and making many people sweat, even if they didn't feel excited. The hall was filled with a slight hum as the audience whispered in anticipation, their phones at the ready to capture the upcoming moment. Sylvester Stallone was sitting in the middle of this tense entourage. He looked relaxed but confident, stretched out in an armchair, legs slightly apart, hands on the armrests. There was no sign of concern on his face, although he certainly knew that the interview would not be easy. Across from him sat Ethan Caldwell, a smartly dressed TV presenter with a perfect hairstyle and a measured tone. He was known for deftly driving his interlocutors into traps of words, getting unsuccessful or compromising statements from them. He is used to controlling the dialogue, directing it in the right direction. And now his lips were curling into a slight, barely noticeable grin. The anticipation of the upcoming game was obvious. Caldwell took a deep breath, bracing himself for the first blow. "Mr. Stallone," he began in a velvety, polished voice. "You have always been a symbol of American masculinity. But tell me, don't you think that this image is already outdated? The force should be more inclusive today, shouldn't it?" Some of the audience nodded approvingly, anticipating how the presenter would corner the action hero. Someone chuckled softly, but Stallone didn't look offended. He blinked slowly, then, without changing his relaxed posture, leaned forward slightly, clasping his fingers in front of him. "So," he said, slowly choosing his words, "in your opinion, being strong is already a disadvantage?" Caldwell chuckled. "I'm just saying that times have changed. Today, people don't solve problems with their fists. We have to move forward. Isn't that so?" There was a pause in the studio, a silence that can make people squirm in their chairs. Stallone rubbed his chin and suddenly laughed. Not restrained, not strained, but open, rolling. "Are you serious?" he said, still smiling. "Do you really think that masculinity is a problem?" The presenter straightened his tie, trying to keep his composure. "I think it can be toxic if it leaves no room for vulnerability." Stallone nodded, as if pondering his words, then, continuing to speak slowly and clearly, asked, "If someone breaks into your house tonight, who would you want to see next to you? A person who will discuss feelings, or someone who can protect you?" There were whispers in the hall, and someone clapped their hands softly. The host opened his mouth to reply, but Stallone didn't give him a chance. Strength is not about fists or shouting. It's about discipline, resilience, and the ability to protect your family. And if you think that the world no longer needs power, then you live in your own special world. Caldwell hesitated for a moment. An uncertain tension flashed in his eyes. He hadn't expected such a rebuff, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Okay," he said, flipping through his notes. "But doesn't Hollywood, including your films, glorify violence as the only solution to problems?" Stallone chuckled. "Hollywood celebrates many things. Have you ever seen a movie where a hero saves the world by filling out paperwork?" There was laughter in the audience. Even some of the crew members smiled faintly. But Caldwell didn't give up. He was still trying to get the situation back under control. "Your films shape people's perceptions. Wouldn't it be better to promote images of heroes who solve problems without violence?" Stallone shrugged his shoulders. "Have you ever watched Rocky?" he asked. "This is not a fight movie. This is a story about resilience, about how to get up when life hits you in the face." And Rambo? He just wanted to be left alone, but they didn't give it to him. That's the whole story. The audience applauded. The presenter clenched his jaw, realizing that the audience had begun to side with his interlocutor. He tried to change his tactics, to make his voice quieter, more personal. "But, Mr. Stallone, modern society is redefining the concept of masculinity. Many people think that the old-fashioned image you present only creates division, not unity. Stallone looked at him intently and suddenly asked, "Have you ever talked to a firefighter? Or with a policeman? Or with a single mother who works 2 jobs to support her children? Do you think their problem is that they are too strong?" He shook his head. "No, their power is what keeps this world afloat." Someone whistled in the studio. The atmosphere has changed. Caldwell was beginning to lose control of the situation. He tried again. "But don't you really think that the old should give way to the new?" Stallone thought about it, and then said, "Have you ever seen a building being demolished? One push of a button and it's gone. But it takes years to build it. People are working day and night, building walls, strengthening the foundation. But those who blow up, they don't care. They don't even think about what they are destroying." There was a tense silence in the hall. No one moved. "You're talking about moving forward," Stallone continued. "But where is forward going? Maybe instead of breaking it, you should think about what from the past is still valuable." Caldwell opened his mouth, but couldn't find anything to say. The audience was no longer with him. And at that moment, he realized that he had lost. The next day, the video from the interview blew up the internet. The headline screamed, "Stallone destroys host. Living legend fights back." The video went viral on social media, and the debate in the comments continued unabated. But amid all the hype, there was one person who didn't write a single post about the interview: Stallone himself. He just moved on, knowing that he didn't need to prove anything. "Mr. Stallone," Ethan began, his voice measured, smooth, as if polished. "You have always been a symbol of American masculinity. But don't you think that such an image is outdated in the modern world? Today we are rethinking the concept of power, making it more inclusive." Part of the audience chuckled. Some of the audience nodded, anticipating how the host would corner his guest. Stallone blinked slowly, appraisingly, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and exhaled slowly through his nose. "Do you mean that courage is something bad now?" His voice was low, calm, but there was a hidden power in it. Ethan chuckled. "Well, I think that we have already left the era when men had to solve problems with their fists. Don't you agree that the world has changed?" "Are you serious?" he finally said, shaking his head. "Do you really think that courage is a problem?" Ethan straightened up and straightened his tie. "I think it can become toxic if it doesn't allow people to be vulnerable." Stallone nodded slowly, as if considering what he had said, then leaned back in his chair and spread his arms. "Let's do this. Imagine that someone breaks into your house tonight. Do you want there to be a toxic, tough guy who will protect you? Or someone who will sit down with the robbers and try to talk about their feelings?" A wave of whispers passed through the hall. Someone applauded. Ethan opened his mouth to say something, but Stallone didn't give him a chance. Courage is not about breaking down walls with your fists or shouting the loudest. It's about standing your ground when life knocks you down, about protecting the family, about discipline, respect, hard work. If you think there's no place in the world for that anymore, he shook his head, then I don't even know what kind of world you live in. Ethan smiled tightly, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. It didn't go according to his script. "Okay, but let's talk about the impact," he continued, flipping through the cards with the prepared questions. "You have built your career on the images of harsh heroes who solve problems by force. Don't you feel responsible for the message this sends to the younger generation?" Stallone did not hesitate. "Hollywood celebrates a lot of things. Have you ever seen a movie where a hero saves the world by filling out paperwork?" The audience burst into laughter. Even some of Ethan's team members couldn't help but smile. But the presenter wasn't going to give up. "But still, don't movies shape culture?" He was trying to seize the initiative. "Shouldn't we offer young viewers heroes who solve problems peacefully?" Stallone sighed. "Have you ever watched Rocky? This movie is not about fighting, but about perseverance, about getting up after every punch. And Rambo? This guy just wanted to be left alone. If he had been allowed to pass through the city in peace, nothing would have happened. The applause grew louder. Ethan began to shake. He was trying to regain control. But today we realize that the old ideals prevent society from moving forward. Isn't it time to put them in the past? Stallone leaned forward, his voice quieter, but that made it even more impressive. Have you ever seen a building being demolished? Ethan hesitated. Well, yes. A couple of charges, a button, and that's it. A few seconds later, the building is gone. Have you seen how the building is being built? Silence. No one moved in the hall. It takes years. Stone by stone. People work day and night. And then those who want to demolish everything come, without even thinking about how much work has been put in. They just love watching everything fall apart. The hall was silent. Ethan swallowed. You say move forward, Stallone continued. But where? If we don't understand what we're breaking, that's not progress. This is destruction. Ethan tried to smile, but he had already lost. In a few minutes, this video will appear on the internet, and the world will decide for itself who is the winner here. And indeed, an hour later, headlines appeared on the network. Stallone smeared the host on live TV, a real man in the age of weakness. Millions of views, endless arguments. Ethan and his team tried to control the situation, but it was too late. At this time, Stallone just walked off the set, smiling calmly. He knew he didn't need to prove anything.